This is probably the most rewarding game mode in the entire game. And no one's playing it. Hello there, aspiring tennos. It's been a while, but we're back with a real video this time. How great. Also, yes, the light is absolutely destroying my face. It looks like I'm being smited down by a death laser from outer space. And trust me, if I could turn off the sun, then I would, but I can't. So we're just gonna have to deal. Curtains, not on my life. Anyways. Okay, so let's talk credits, right? You might be sitting there thinking, I have 10 million credits. I have all the credits I could ever need. But I'm telling you right now, you don't, right? Because Prime mods each cost 2 million to max out, okay? So you can max out 5 Prime mods and then you're out of credits, right? You're gonna need 20 of those throughout the Warframe journey. You're only a fourth of the way there just for your Prime mods. Do you know how many credits I can spend when Battlecare tier comes around? No, you need credits, and this is how you're gonna get it. These out here on the fringes of the star charts on each planet, that's your Dark Sector mission. And it doesn't say anywhere that this is the case, but apparently completing a Dark Sector mission will grant you a cache of credits depending on the level of the mission, and you can easily get 50,000 credits, which again is nothing in the end game, but when you're first getting started, it's a godsend, okay? But anyways, so the guideline for this one is, if you have access to none of the other methods, you use this one, otherwise you don't touch it. It is to be abandoned the moment that you gain access to some of the way better ways of farming credits. But this is, technically speaking, the first way to farm credits in the game that you will gain access to. And again, it can be any Dark Sector. It can be this one, it can be anyone. Missions with this icon, that's the Dark Sectors. And also you'll see it says extra affinity and stuff, that's the Dark Sector. Okay, anyways. So let's talk about the main way that you're currently making credits, and that's with the index. The index, at some point, you're gonna get to Neptune, and when you do, you're gonna start here, get the chat out of the way, gonna come down here, through here, up here, and then you're gonna get to the index. This node on the star chart in particular is glorious. Go away, son, nobody likes you. The reason why this node is so glorious is because, hands down, it is probably the most prosperous way to farm credits in the game, right? It's gonna give you the most credits per minute. It has some problems, which we'll talk about later, but first, let's talk about how you can harvest this node in the best way possible. Let's talk builds, let's talk setup, let's talk strategy, let's talk, is it even worth to go for these advanced strategies, or should you just jump in there? We're gonna go through all of it, and then we're gonna move on to the profit taker. But first, let's go through everything there is to know about the index. When it comes to the index, there are certain setups, strategies, call it whatever you want. I call it composition. And it's a question of who plays what and who handles which responsibilities. Generally speaking, there are 3 types of classes within the index, and that's what you will see in recruiting chat, and which you yourself should probably be using when recruiting other people. So first up, we have the DPS. Most of the time, you're only gonna have one DPS, and there are multiple Warframes characters that you can play as DPS. For this section, we'll just use Mesa as an example, but we will go over all of the potential DPSs, right? So it's in the name, the DPS job is to kill stuff, and that's pretty much it. It's their job. Their job is to kill stuff. They don't have to worry about helping the other players or picking up the points, right? That's the carry's job. But who's the carry? Well, in this example, we're gonna be using Rhino, or I guess specifically Rhino Prime. So you have one job as the carry, at least in the low-cost setup. We'll talk about that in a moment. But for Rhino here, you have one job. You got to pick up the points, right? You want to stack 15 points without dying and then turn them in. That's your job, right? At least in the main setup, you don't have to kill anything, and neither does the supports. But supports, let's talk about supports. This is by far the most diverse class of characters that you can play, the supports, right? But the best of the best, probably in most cases you will find, is Wisp. But again, more on that in the next section. But for now, let's just define what the support's role is, at least in the basic setup. You don't have to kill anything, you don't have to carry any points. This usually means that this is a pretty easy kind of role to play. Also because you don't need amazing builds to make support work. With Wisp, you just need some range and ability strength and a little bit of duration, and then your motes will do just fine. If you get killed, no big deal, your motes will stay on the ground and it won't affect the DPS or the carry who relies on your mote. So your job is just to have your motes exist, and they're on an infinite timer, so once you put them down, you kind of done your job. Now there is a different setup that is a little bit more efficient where the support do take on small responsibilities, but let's talk about those setups now. No, it is not the next day. I don't need multiple takes to do these videos. You need multiple takes to do these videos. Compositions. Good. As I talk about this, I will be putting it up on screen, the name of each of the different compositions, and then I'll quickly explain how they work, right? So the first one, and this is the most basic, this is the one that most people run, it's 1 DPS, 1 carry, 2 support. Pretty self-explanatory, and I already explained what the role of each character is, but basically the DPS kills, the carry carries the point, doesn't kill anything, the supports just sit put and cast their support abilities. Very simple and straightforward. In this case, the hardest role to play by far is the carry, because you have to deal with all of the debuffs while carrying up to 15 points. The second hardest role being the DPS. The supports kind of have a free ride on this one, but it is a very popular style, especially because pretty much everyone can play it. You can easily get people for it. Now, there is another variation. It's slightly more efficient, technically speaking, though it can be hard to find players for it. It's still 1 DPS, 1 carry, and 2 support. But on this build, the carry and support are basically running a hybrid between a standard index build and a high-end survival sort of steel path build, right? Min-maxed build. And they're all running around with very powerful AoE weapons, preferably the Arcaplasmo, or you know, your favorite weapon. It doesn't really matter what it is, and you're helping to kill the enemies. So everyone is killing, but without crossing the line. I'll explain what that means at the end, because that is actually very important, but we'll get to it. But anyways, basically same as before, except now the easiest job is actually the DPS, because you're getting so much help from your teammates. And if you go down, it's still bad, but it's not like a disaster, because your team can pick up the slack while you respawn. But anyways, moving on. Then we have this thing which I think it's stupid, but I'm gonna talk about it just so that I won't have to hear about it in the comments. It's 2 DPS, 2 carry, where you have 1 DPS and 1 carry on one side of the map, and 1 DPS and 1 carry on the other side, so you are guarding each goal. This is meaningless, pointless even. I get it, pointless. But the thing is that the enemies spawn around you. As long as you don't cross the line, they're all gonna spawn on your side anyways. The only benefit you get for this is that occasionally, very rarely, the enemy will spawn behind the upstairs area on the back stairs, and you won't be able to hit them for a couple of seconds, where the person on the other end would then be able to snipe them. That's the only benefit, and I think the fact that you have to basically cross the map to pick up points, and both carries have to do this, I think this is just gonna really ruin your spawns. I do not recommend this method at all. I really only bring this up to tell you not to do it. It's not a good method. Here's one that's pretty self-explanatory. 1 carry, 1 DPS. Strap up and play the best index of your lives. Obviously this is tough because you don't have the support for your teammates. However, it is possible, and you need a very small amount of organization. You just need a good DPS and a decent carry, preferably if you're friends, that's a good option. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to that. It's pretty self-explanatory, as I said. And finally, we have the option of 2 DPS, 1 carry, 1 support.
The only reason why you would run this, and you would never run it on the high end, but on the budget version, which most people play anyways, if one DPS goes down, you still have the other one, right? So there is some benefit to it. Plus, mixing the right DPS, multiple DPSs. Some of them have more range, some of them can kill faster. There is some benefit to it, but mainly, I don't know. I don't think it's worth the extra organization. But hey, it is an option if you want to do that. So, it is very easy for someone like me to just go, whoops, just do this, just do that, and then not explain how to do it. And I've certainly been guilty of doing that in the past. Now we talked about composition, and we've talked about like strategy. What does each role do? Now we need to get down to brass tacks and talk builds. So we'll start with Mesa, which in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, is the best DPS for Index. So this is the base build for Mesa. It's not a great build, and by the way, velocity, arcane velocity is a luxury. You don't need it. It's very nice to have, but you don't need it at all. But it's nice to have. So this is the standard build, plenty enough. And then over here, if you want to min-max, you'll do something like this. Really don't need Umbra Intensify. I regret putting it on here. It makes a very small difference. That was a way too big sacrifice for a very small gain. Very importantly, make sure you run enemy radar, okay? You can't rely on your teammates always doing it, and knowing where the enemies are. So if they spawn slightly behind the wall where you can't get them, you can just move to the side and then get them with your aimbot. It is very important to have this. It's very, very, very important to have in the Index. Don't underestimate how powerful this is. Then, let's talk about the regulators. And by the way, it doesn't have to be Mesa Prime. Normal Mesa is fine as well. You lose like a little bit of energy and a little bit of armor. It's not gonna make a difference, trust me, as it rarely does with primed warframes. But so anyways, right. This is the min-maxed version, obviously. And this is pretty much the build you would run for a normal build as well, except, you know, instead of prime target cracker, normal target cracker, normal pistol gambit. This one's called a barrel diffusion, the normal version, and it will do just fine. You know, it might take 2 extra shots to kill an enemy, but when you're firing 10 shots a second, that's not a problem. You know, this is, you know, I mean, if you have the resources and you like playing Mesa anyways, absolutely. But you don't need this to be in the Index, right? Don't think that you need this super min-maxed build. You don't. I now bring you the lazy person's build. Now, just to be clear, I'm not touching my keyboard right now, okay? I'm just letting the clone kill everything. So that's basically the ups and downs of this build. Let's talk about it. Here it is. And this is by no means a min-maxed build. Okay, let's just be clear on that. But it has everything you need. Now please note that the clone will scale from your health and your armor. So make sure you give it enough of this stuff. As you can see here, absolutely you could go ahead and max this one out. It's not for tactical reasons that is not maxed out. I just don't have the capacity. In terms of arcanes, use whatever you want, you know, Guardian if you want to be more tanky, so on and so forth, right? Nothing is necessary, but everything is useful. So it's really down to your preference on this one. Anything can work, as Wukong is so damn versatile. This is the sniper, in huge quotation marks, that I've decided to use. I think the Vectis or the Rubico Prime would probably be a better option, but whatever. Anyways, this is the build. This is how it works. I think it works okay. It's not great, but it works fine. As you just saw, it does work. You can also do this with Equinox using her duality augment. This will actually give you a clone that will deal more damage, but the clone and you will be way more squishy. So maybe as a off support, that's an option. I don't recommend it, but this is basically the DPSs for the Index. Moving on quickly to some of our carries. which all use the same build luckily, which is a lot easier for me because that way I can just showcase it on one warframe and then talk about all the viable ones. So this is the build. And for Rhino, which in my opinion is the best carry, it's all about the iron skin. Now here's the thing, when you're carrying a lot of points, your energy will be drained pretty much instantly. Your shield and your health will be reduced to nothing. So there aren't really any defensive mechanisms that's going to work while you're carrying a lot of points, except for ferrite armor. What's it called? Iron skin. Sure, the ability is called iron skin. The reason why this works is because even though you have no energy, you're still gonna be able to still have this. You just can't cast a new one until you find some more energy. And very importantly, it's not affected by your health or shield. It just scales with your armor regardless of how much health you have. This has to be depleted before your shields and health can take damage, which is why it's so powerful. Now, stepping away from this for a moment, you need iron shrapnel. It doesn't have to be leveled, but you need this mod. And this is so you can cancel your armor. Let's say you have 200 armor left. Being able to cancel that sliver of armor that's not going to help you and immediately cast a new one is extremely powerful. And really that is what makes this build work. So you need this. And something else is that the orbs will allow you to get 50 energy. So this build here doesn't actually work if you're not min-maxing. In the case where you are not min-maxing, you have to get rid of blind raids and replace it with something else, because in that scenario you will need this to be below 50 so that you can cast it immediately. Okay, now there is a way around this. There is a way to guarantee that you're always gonna get 100 energy from each orb. Okay, so this is very niche for sure, but let's talk about it. It's energizing shot. Shooting an energy orb with a pistol in which this is equipped. It has to be a non-AoE weapon unless it is a kit gun, then it can be an AoE weapon. You shoot the energy orb and you get 100 energy, 110 actually. So that way you'll be able to be way more greedy with your build. You would even be able to go as far as to remove this one and then replace it with something else instead. Maybe a Dabson would actually be a good pick. But anyways, that's the build and all of its facets. Now let's quickly talk about the other viable options, I guess. But this is really only if you don't have Rhino. Otherwise you should run Rhino. Nezha, a warding halo, can still protect you, okay? But you can't cancel it manually in the same way that Rhino can. And you can still take some damage, but it is in most cases still enough to protect you. But again, only use this if you don't have Rhino. Then we... hold on. No, stop it. There we go. Then we also have Wukong, because of his passive that allows him to essentially die 4 times per life before actually dying. Which is also a good option. Not quite perfect, but you can build him really tanky. Also, you might be lucky enough to get some Defiance in there, but don't rely on it. Here is one which I don't believe in, but I am going to mention it because people swear by it. While in the air, Wisp are invisible to enemies. I mean, you can still die, you know, you can still take splash damage and die, or get a rogue electricity proc and die. And you're not going to be able to cast abilities, you're not going to be able to save yourself that way. Now, why would you even do this at all? Well, the one reason I've heard that you would possibly want to do this, right, is because Wisp support comes from her modes. You put those down and they're just going to sit around forever. So your support, in a sense, is guaranteed. So you would be able to run around and do the job of a carry. And so in theory, you'd be able to have 3 supports. Is this necessary? No. Is it worth the effort? In my opinion, absolutely not. But, you know, I had to bring it up. Alright, so wait. Alright, so finally we have the support. And there is a lot, so I'm gonna go through these quickly. We have Banshee, Gara, Hildren, Limbo, Mag, Nova, Oberon, Protea, Wisp, Trinity, and Equinox. All are viable options, but some are much better than others. The ones I recommend is Banshee, Nova, Oberon, Protea, Wisp, and Equinox. But let's just quickly go over each of them. Banshee. She has her Sonar, her second ability. It's the strongest damage buff in the entire game. It's gonna make mincemeat of all the enemies. She can just stand behind the pillar in safety, spamming her second ability with Equilibrium on. And hopefully, if you don't already have a dispensary on your team, you can bring it. You're gonna get tons of energy. Just spam that shit over and over and over again. Incredible damage buff. Gara, 90% damage reduction buff, but it has to be applied manually. Good, but honestly a lot of trouble to make work. Hildren, her third ability will give you some shield back and make your shield gate last longer. Don't do this one. And we have Limbo. Why Limbo? Well, you can banish your Mesa to the void and it won't hurt her in any way. It will make it so that the enemies can't attack her, but for some reason Mesa can still make use of her regulators while inside the void to damage enemies. So she'll be invulnerable but can still deal full damage. That's pretty good. I still don't recommend this, but it is an option. Mid-niche, but kind of fun. Mag, ultimate gives shields back. Then we have Nova. For high-end teams that really want to speed things up, literally, you can build a Speed Nova, which is just a Nova with as much negative ability strength as possible. That way, her ultimate will actually speed up the enemies instead of slowing them down, which will mean that they will approach you sooner and faster and get out of your way. Also, it's a pretty decent damage buff. Oberon. He has his healing ability, which in of itself is pretty bad, but using the Phoenix augment every 90 seconds, if per ally, if they would have gone down, instead they'll just be instantly resurrected, which is pretty good because there's no bleed out in the index. Protea, her shield satellites are amazing. She can deal a bit of damage with her artilleries, even if you don't build for it. And of course she has the prolonged dispensary. All very useful abilities. Then we have Wisp, which need I say anymore, all her modes are really useful. Shock that, you know, stuns the enemies when they get too close. That's gonna save your carry, trust me. You have a mode that gives you more health and health regeneration. That's gonna save your DPS, your support, and probably not your carry because they're carrying so many points, but still really good. And then there's a mode that gives you more attack speed, which is something that Mesa loves. So you get so much good stuff from her. It's just the modes, the rest of the kit is pretty useless, but the modes are so good that I think she's the best out of all of them. Trinity, her ultimate gives damage reduction 75% to all enemies in infinity range. This is not really going to do that much, but I mean, it's an option. And then we have Equinox. Now I want to talk about Equinox because people sleep a bit on Equinox, I think. I mean, I think that people know that she's a good support, but I don't know if people necessarily know why Equinox is a really good support. Now, I put Dispensary on her. I think she benefits greatly from this. Use this with Equilibrium. You're going to get all the energy you could ever need. And, you know, this one, Pacify and Provoke, you're going to be using the Night version for reasons that I'll get into in a moment. But while in her Night form, she will reduce incoming damage, which, you know, that's not bad at all, you know? Anyways, this is basically what makes her really good as a support. In her Night form, whenever, and it has a huge range, you can see here, it has 34 meters of range, like radius, so that's in all directions. So it's a ring that's almost 70 meters across. It's a huge area. Enemies inside this area, when they're killed, they're gonna give shield back to your allies. Why is this good? Because on Mesa you want to run a Decaying Dragon Key to reduce your shield. So if you kill 2 enemies, you're gonna get all of your shield back. Okay? And with all your shield back, you have a free shield gate. Right? You take damage and you lose your shield. Now you have 1.3 seconds of invulnerability. You kill 2 enemies in that time, you have 1.3 seconds of invulnerability again.
That's really good. It's gonna save your carry, it's gonna save your DPS. I mean, if your supports are running Decaying Dragon Keys as well, it's probably gonna save them as well. Really good ability. Let's talk about actually building these guys. So here's an example of a build, and this is for Equinox. Now, unlike the other Warframes where it's like, oh, you need this specific build for this and that, when it comes to supports, it's not that important, right? It's not a one specific build, but I'll sort of tell you what you're looking for when building them. So in this case, we're looking at Equinox, and the strong ability she has is her Mend and Maim and her Pacify and Provoke. So we look at what stats benefit those abilities, and because we are running Equilibrium and because we are running Dispensary, we're gonna have plenty of energy, right? We can be a little bit greedy. Now, even with a bit of reduced range, with increased range, my bad, we have plenty of range to be able to do what we need to do. So the main thing that we would maybe want could be a little bit more ability strength. Well, I don't have the capacity for it, but you get the point, right? If you could get a bit more power on this build, maybe using Umbra Intensify, so on and so forth, you'd get more shields back and you would amplify the damage more, and so on and so forth. Let's go and take a look at a different Warframe. Let's look at Banshee, for example, right? I can't spell right now. There. Banshee. Apparently I already have builds on Banshee. I didn't know that I had that. But let's remove everything and take it from the very beginning. So you would want enemy radar, which I don't think that fits on her. So let's just pretend like I'm putting enemy radar on here. Normally, in this kind of scenario, you would have to format her then. So what are we looking at? Well, a lot of abilities are not going to be useful to us, not in this case. We want to be sitting in a corner spamming sonar. So what do we want? Well, we want power strength. All right, fine. See, how can we get power strength? We have blind raids, for example. We probably do want to run blind raids on her. And transistent fortitude, sure. That's plenty of ability strength. As you can see, it's already a 12 times multiplier. Dealing 12 times more damage is pretty good. Plus, these can overlap, which will be more than 100 times more damage. Insane. But we need to balance out our stats. Now we're gonna look at duration. How can we get this? Well, we can get it like this with duration. We also actually need quite a bit of range. We're gonna look into that now. We're gonna get some overextended, probably. It's okay to lose a bit of our power. Again, it's still a 10 times multiplier. 10 times is more than enough. We don't need to go overboard. We need to balance the build. Again, strats, absolutely. Augur reads, absolutely. Maybe not reads if we're running overextended. Plenty of range, plenty of strength. Those are the most important stats. Then we'll look at stuff like efficiency. We don't have any efficiency. It's gonna be really tough for us to sustain ourselves. Probably gonna do it like this, and then the buff is gonna last for how long? It's gonna last for 20 seconds. 20 seconds is enough. We don't need any more than that, because ideally, if it takes Mesa 20 seconds to kill an enemy, we have a problem, all right? But we still can't do this. I'm trying to go through this as quickly as I can. The thing is, we do need the duration. If we are the person running the dispensary, if our other supporters running the dispensary, then we can go crazy on negative duration. Otherwise, we have to be a bit more careful about how we go about that. Now, we don't want that, actually. Don't want that at all. To look here. Unfortunately, we don't have that many options for efficiency, so I guess we'd have to do it like this. Unfortunately, again, giving ourselves a little bit more shield, but it's okay. Now, we're gonna then ask ourselves a question. How are we going to survive? Well, Banshee doesn't have any defense, but she's gonna be spamming a lot of abilities, which, you know, is gonna use energy. what if we could turn that energy into shields? Well, we can. So what I've done here is that I've replaced strats with augur reads, and then we have augur methods on here for some more duration. Then, we're not going to be using this, so let's remove that. Just pretend like we have enemy radar on there. Down here, we're using augur seeker and augur impact. That is 4 of the 6 augur mods. The last ones are on the companion, so we can't use those because no companion in the index. But as you can see, we get 160% of our energy spent back as shields. So, well, how much is it going to cost to cast our second ability? In this case, it's going to be 55. So you're going to get like 80 shields back per use, just about. So when we go back in here and we take a look at Banshee, right? We have 2 options. Either we can accept this and then just cast this twice, or else we can get rid of this one, which will bring back our shields down to 75, so below the 80 threshold. And I'm sorry, it's getting a little complicated. And we're now spending 62 shields. So every time we cast our second ability, we're gonna get our shields back. We are gonna be able to cast this every 1.3 seconds with this setup. So we'll be doing that over and over and over again, and that way we can never die. So as long as we have our dispensary up and we keep spamming our second ability, we can't die, as I keep saying. And we'll also constantly be applying our buff, which is our job. We're not supposed to kill. So this is just one way to build a support. But again, look into, as I mentioned earlier, what is their strength, what makes them a good support, and then build around that. So stay alive and give as much support as you can. That is your job as the support. Anyways, moving on to tips and tricks. Okay guys, sorry, just a very quick update. I was not paying attention to the range on here. Even without overextended, it's still 45 meters, which is plenty enough, because otherwise you'd have to cross the line, and you don't cross the line. We're getting there in a moment. You have to run equilibrium. I forgot about that. And using the dispensary, you have to run equilibrium. The reason why you absolutely must run equilibrium is because the health orbs, which is worth 100 energy each, will also drop. And with the amount of strength we have, they'll drop 2 of them, so that'll be worth 200 energy. And you're gonna miss out on 200 energy every rotation of the dispensary if you don't have equilibrium equipped. So my bad, I kind of forgot about that. Alright, so we've made it to the tips and tricks section, let's get over here, of the video. And yes, the sun is back. Curse you, sun! But anyways, let's talk about it. There's 2 things which you have to be aware of, specifically when it comes to the index. The first one is that if you use a dispensary, or if any one of your teammates uses a dispensary, for some reason, the energy orbs that normally spawns around the maps do not spawn anymore. So be careful about that. It's not a bad thing to use a dispensary. You just have to communicate this with your team so that your carry isn't relying on the energy orb to survive, which is not there anymore. The other thing, and this is very important, and I've been trying to tell people this for years, don't cross the line. What line am I talking about? Well, if you see here in the footage behind me, right, I'm standing up on this box, and then in the middle is a pillar, and behind that is a door that leads to the inside of the arena, right? If you take the door frame, if you take the bottom of that door frame and you draw a line over that and you continue that line through the entire map, don't cross that line. Okay, so the thing is, enemies will spawn around you and your teammate, right? If you cross that line, for some reason, I don't know why, but the spawns on the other side of the map will become active. As long as everyone stays behind that line as far back as possible. It's not a guarantee that it won't happen if you're standing behind it, but it's rare that it will. On the other hand, if you do cross it, it's almost guaranteed to happen. Please do not cross this line, even as the carry, right? Even as the carry. Remember, the points don't despawn for a long time. You can just hold on to it and then wait as long as possible to give the DPS the best opportunity to kill as many enemies as they can before you turn in the points, at which point you have to cross the line. At some point you have to do it, but you do it as little as possible. And you do it as, you know, when you're on the other side, you do whatever you need to do as fast as possible, and then you come back. Anyways, now let's talk about the rates. How many credits are you gonna make in the index? So I'm not gonna lie, I got a kick out of making this equation just because it looks really nasty and scary, but really it's quite simple. It's a total round played multiplied by the reward you get for each round played minus your investment, so the initial pay of 50,000, divided by how many rounds you complete before extracting, multiplied by the total amount of rounds played, divided by how many rounds you play before extracting. All of that divided by 60 will give you how many credits you earn per minute. Let's go ahead and put some numbers into this. So, putting in our numbers, we get 41.5k credits per hour. And that's assuming you can complete 10 rounds, which means that each round takes like 6 minutes. I think with a coordinated team, you can probably double that. If you can get through each round in 3 minutes, which I absolutely think you can with a good team. I've done it before, so I know you can actually. So you'll be earning 83,000 credits per minute. Pretty good. But what if you were using a credit booster? Now, I mean, I know it looks like that you would simply have doubled, but you would actually have slightly more than doubled the amount you earn, because the amount that you have to invest and which you lose on each extraction is slightly less. I mean, it's the same, but the reward is double. So you're paying the same amount, but you're getting more out. Does this make sense? Basically what I'm saying is that 50,000 makes up a larger percentage of 250,000 compared to 450,000. Anyways, regardless, it's almost the same, and so it's not really worth getting into because it's, you know, it is pretty much double. So using a credit booster, you would be making 166,000 credits per minute. That's pretty good. And obviously, if this was doing a event weekend, you could be making way more than that. Assuming, again, you can do it in 3 minutes, requires a bit of coordination, so on and so forth. But if you could do it, you could make more than 300,000 credits per minute. How about that? Let's try it again. Alright. So the previous segment took forever, but luckily that was everything on index. So we can finally move on to the other two main methods of making a lot of credits in the game. And luckily, these segments won't be quite as long as the previous ones, for reasons that will be obvious to you in a little bit. But let's actually talk about it. So our next method is here on Fortuna. Actually, it's in Orvelis, but we'll get there in a moment. Okay. There is something that I have to get off my chest. There is something which I need to tell you guys. I don't follow my own advice. I always tell you that you should take the most efficient path through the game. But I don't do profit taker. I probably should, but I'm not doing it. And so I had a horrible experience with it the first time that I tried to do it. And so I never really got back into it. I'm not gonna sit here and try and give you advice on builds and strategies when I myself don't know what I'm doing. Just to be clear, I do want to learn Profit Taker, I do want to learn Eidolon Hunting, specifically the duo form of Eidolon Hunting. I just haven't gotten into it. Irregardless, I'm gonna leave a link in the description and in the cards, if that's even possible, to a well-known YouTuber named Axel, who will break down both two viable builds, but you have to use the one for Chroma if you're farming credits, as well as primaries, secondaries, and all of the stuff that you will need. What's the benefits to doing Profit Taker compared to doing the Index? Well, in the Index, you need a 4-man squad. Here, you can do it solo. Almost as fast. This is a huge plus. Something else worth noting is the fact that you need a way better build for Profit Taker. if you're soloing it. If you have a group of friends, you can totally do it just as fast with normal builds. But don't think that you're gonna find people in recruiting chat looking for Prophet Taker. So unless you have a dedicated squad, you're probably gonna have to do it on your own, which is possible with the min-max build, but just keep in mind this is an end game solution. So if you look at the index, what you are obtaining from doing the index is credits, which is also true here. You'll be given 125,000 credits for taking down the Prophet Taker. This is doubled using Chroma's 4th, and this doubling multiplies with boosters. So with a credit booster, that's 500,000 credits. Is that really right? Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, 500,000 credits. And if you have the event weekend booster, then you're going to get even more, double that amount, to 1 million. And then, as well, I'm trying to go through this quickly. If we look at our Smeta, this one, very importantly, it has this one specific charm. And these buffs, it's one out of 6 buffs. If you get the affinity buff specifically, everything will be doubled. And that includes credits. So you have the opportunity to have that doubled once again. This doesn't happen very often, but you are going to be earning a couple more credits. If you think that's worth it, you're probably going to have to revive a pet a few times. That's going to take some time, which you're then not spending farming. But I just want to make sure that I give you all of your options. So that's pretty much all there is to that. There is one more thing actually. Let me out of my tin can so I can go talk to Little Dog over here. So Little Dog is associated with the quills, as you'll probably know. And the way to gain standing with her is to trade in toroids. Now killing the Prophet Taker will always give you, hold on, let's put it over here. Will give you at the very least 1 charisma toroid. But it, again, the charm buff will double it, and resource drops booster will also double it. So, you know, using resource booster, you will get 12,000 standing per takedown of the Prophet Taker. So, be careful. If we go ahead and we browse a Little Dog's wares, we will see that he has a lot of good arcanes. For example, one that I really love to use is Magus Repair. These sells for like 6 platinum each, but you can consolidate them. Remember, if you create a level 5 Magus Repair, you can sell it for, I think, 120 is platinum, which is pretty good. So also, you do get other rewards from completing the bounty itself, right? If we go ahead and talk to the people over here at the table, these, you know, Prophet Taker, full step. For example, you're gonna get a relics, radiant relics actually, which will give you, in this case, Korra, prime the optics. I want myself some of those. And also we got here some other good stuff. Korra, I see Harrow, I see Gara, a lot of good stuff. Good stuff all around. This one's actually worth something, like I think 10, 12 platinum, which is really good, just as a random drop. This one, I don't know about this one. You do need these as well, so you're gonna spare yourself some time farming them or buying them from Little Dog. You also get a ton of bonds that you need to level up for tuna. There's just a lot of good options. You get a lot of good stuff. It takes roughly the same amount of time. So definitely, if you have the capacity and the willingness to learn this fight and to make the builds that you need for it, this is probably a better option. Probably. At some point, I would like to learn how to do this fight so I can actually gather some numbers for myself and do a proper breakdown. But my prediction, and I'm feeling pretty confident in this, I would like to say that Prophet Taker, if you have the capacity to do it in 3 minutes, is probably going to be better than the index. Okay, with that out of the way, let's move on to the last one on this list. Finally, this does take us to the final method of making credits in this game. And yes, that is right, the final method is with the Railjack. Now, I know that is... hold on. I know that is a giant turnoff for most of you. But hear me out at least.
because we are going to do a little bit of a breakdown and we are going to look at all of the benefits. Now, again, as far as I can tell, this is not listed anywhere on the mission screen, but when you do a Railjack mission, you get a cache of credits, and not a cache, not a bill, but I'm talking like a box, a cache of credits. And the thing is that this cache, at least in the Veil Proxima, is 100,000, which is honestly not bad at all. Now, here's the thing. You cannot solo this. No way in hell that you can do this. And you do require a full team of 4 people with dedicated builds and a bit of Railjack knowledge, because you're not going to be able to run this fast at the beginning. Once you get good at it, then we can talk. Now, with a good and dedicated squad, you can do relics in the Veil Proxima on the Grenier tile sets specifically in 3 minutes. So essentially, you're getting a very valuable item every single last time you do it. Okay, that's important. Then you also get around 1,000 endo and 100,000 credits while opening relics. And it's Axie relics, which is some of the ones that already takes the longest amount of time to open and which tend to have the best rewards. This is probably the most rewarding game mode in the entire game. And no one's playing it. No one's playing it. It's dead. It wasn't dead on arrival because people wanted those hollow keys. Now no one's playing it. Anyways, I'm not here to complain about that. I am gonna talk about the builds you're gonna be using. I'm not gonna be talking about the Railjack side of things because I want to make a how to Railjack 101 to teach you people some etiquette, because I'm going insane. But we'll save that for that video. Let's talk some builds. Alright, we are finally on the home stretch of this very long video. Let's quickly talk about the builds that you're gonna be using in Railjack, because again, I'll save the Railjack itself for its own video. Clearly you guys need it. Anyways, so the build I showed you earlier with the Mesa for Index, the min-maxed version specifically, is absolutely also viable for this. If you're the one who is going off to complete the missions, this is the kind of build you would be using, okay? Next up, we have the Pilot /FA. You can really play this at either or. If you don't know what FA is, don't worry about it. Video coming out about Railjack, have I mentioned that yet? Now you might look at this build and say, well, dumbass, it's not complete, you have an open slot right here. Which, yes, that is true. You can put whatever you want there. We don't really need anything. The only mandatory mods here is Equilibrium, Continuity, doesn't have to be primed, and Narrow-minded. Strength is nice because it gives us a higher chance of dropping extra pickups, which is nice. We love that. But you don't need it. A bit of efficiency because, you know, it's just nice. It's more energy. And that's what's all about. Having more energy. That's what's important here. Okay. Flow. You need flow. Doesn't have to be primed. It's very nice if it is, but you don't specifically need it. What is the point of this insane build? Here's the thing. As the captain of the Railjack, if you play well, you'll never have to see combat with your Warframe, right? And you still can kill. You're just not very good at it. You just don't make a mistake, right? Just don't make a mistake. Honestly, it's pretty easy to not get hit by the ram sleds. And even if you do get hit, and even if you can't handle it yourself, your team can save you. So basically, you throw down your dispensary and it's gonna pump you up to the you know what with energy, and basically you're gonna be able to just spam your Seeker volley over and over and over again, basically instantly clearing any fighters that show up. And then you'll have your friend on the forward artillery to take care of the cruise ships while your other 2 teammates clears the secondary objectives. So that's basically the idea behind it. Also, I forgot to mention this as per usual, but you need to have synth fiber on one of your companions, and your companion has to stay alive for this to work. So I recommend bringing the Panzerwulperpfeiler, as it has the ability to revive itself. So basically, you know, why do we care about giving our companion 25 armor or 25% armor or whatever it is? We don't. That's unimportant. The reason why we care about this mod is because it allows us to pick up health orbs even if our health is already at 100%. So without this, we won't be able to trigger equilibrium without first taking damage, which, you know, we're not trying to do. So you need this. How fitting is it that we would end up on a spreadsheet? Yes, this entire video is just an excuse for me to talk about how great Railjack is. Now I know that I am literally the only person in this entire game who enjoys Railjack. Obviously that's not true, but there's so few people playing that the game mode is dead. Like, why even try when no one's there? And then you're not there, and then you won't be there when other people are trying to see if anybody's there, and then it's dead. Anyways, let's talk about how insane the rewards here are. Alright? This is assuming that you can do it in 4 minutes, which most players can. If you go crazy and you do it in 3 minutes, which is possible with a very dedicated team, man, it's crazy. But let's stay on 4 minutes for now. How about that? So you're gonna be opening about 15 relics per hour. You're gonna be walking away with about 15,000 endo, and you're gonna be walking away with about 1.5 million credits. Now you might say, 1.5 million for an hour worth of grinding? That's not that good. And you're kind of right. But unlike the index where all you do is grind credits, here you're getting something else at the same time. And man, is it good. Like, just the secondary reward you get for completing the bonus objective usually comes out to be somewhere between 10 and 15, though some of the mods are not really worth selling. That's why I've sort of downplayed it a bit and, you know, said 100 and then half that in the total. But absolutely, in terms of relics, and by the way, I'm assuming here that you're gonna make 10 platinum per relic, and you might be sitting there thinking, no way, no way, no way. But I actually think that when you consider the method of ducats and turning it into prime mods and bolting those, or stockpiling, or whatever you want to call it, I actually think it's way higher than that. I think it might be I think it could be double that. Especially if your group is running it flawless with resource boosters. It can be even better. So the results could be even better than the ones you're seeing here. Again, I don't recommend that you sit down and grind anything for 8 hours, but I know that some of you do anyways. So if you sat down and did this for 8 hours, you would walk away with an insane amount of plat in assets. Now, are you gonna be able to get this plat immediately? No. This requires some time investment. But you have to understand, people are looking for these kind of methods of making this insane amount of platinum just instantly as liquid platinum that you can just pocket the same day. It does not exist. You can't just transmute your way into being rich. You can only flush your credits down the drain with that method. There is no get rich fast scheme, unless there is a popular event going, which there is not right now. So this is probably the best way to make platinum in the game right now. Absolutely. I think I'm willing to die on this hill. Island hunts cannot keep up with this. Even if you're doing 6x3, which no one is doing consistently, even then, which is probably the hardest thing you can do in this game right now, I think. You can't keep up with this at all, and no one's playing it. Anyways, I need to wrap up this very long video. If you somehow watched all the way to the end, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.